Hi, scholars of dance. This is your instructor, Sarah Jackowitz. So beginning with this first slide, we see an image on it's a cover of Point magazine. And we have 3 dancers on the cover of this publication. And I just want you to notice them and notice your reaction to this image. It's a powerful image. One reason why I think this topic is very important is because when you study dance, you have to recognize, just as you must when studying any other cultural phenomenon, that white supremacy is still an issue, it's still a problem. So these 3 dancers here are Misty Copeland, who is on your right-hand side, who's the first Black female soloist or principal dancer at ABT, American Ballet Theater, in 2 decades. And she's an extremely accomplished ballerina. She's performed with Prince. She's done many advertisement campaigns for Under Armour and other products. She's very wealthy from those campaigns. She's done TED Talks and she's written a book. There's a movie about her life. She's a very interesting person and a very successful ballerina. The center figure is Ebony Williams, who is another extremely accomplished dancer. She was a member of the Cedar Lake Contemporary Ballet until they lost their funding from a private donor. But she was also featured in the Beyonce video for Single Ladies. So you can check that out. And a lot of commercial work, but she's also a very accomplished ballerina. And the third dancer on your left-hand side is Ashley Murphy, who went to the Joffrey School, studied at Joffrey, studied at the Alvin Ailey School, and danced for Dance Theater of Harlem. So she's also a very accomplished ballerina. Privilege is something we need to define when we talk about ballet. Ballet developed in an environment of extreme privilege. Privilege is any advantage that is unearned. So while no one is in control of who their parents are or where they are born in the world, those things have an effect on that person's life chances, unfortunately. So privilege comes in many, many different forms. White privilege is specifically privilege that is connected to the color of one's skin. So a sub-definition that's connected to white privilege is the idea of cultural deficiency and Eurocentricity. So cultural deficiency is the idea that people of color underperform in various institutions, such as, for example, the education system, because of a deficiency in their culture. So this is a racist idea. It's the idea that a complex combination of religion, language, behavior patterns, ways of interacting, parenting styles is the reason why Black and Latino students underperform in school. It's a racist theory. It blames the underperforming students themselves instead of the education system, and does not critique the education system itself for containing any institutionalized or systemic racism. So we want to avoid that, kind of question that and critique that whenever we come across it. Eurocentricity is any ideas about what is good, what is desirable, what is preferred, that places European cultural ideals, European aesthetics above other aesthetics. So, for example, in the beauty industry, Eurocentricity is evident in the idea that lighter skin is more attractive, that European hair texture is more desirable than other types of hair texture, that European features are more attractive than other features. That's a Eurocentric aesthetic, and it's another thing we need to call into question, critique whenever we notice it. Colorism is specifically the idea that lighter skin is more attractive, and colorism is found in many cultures across the globe. It's prevalent within many communities of color. Assimilationist theory or climate theory is an idea that developed during the Renaissance, which held erroneously that people of color were darker skinned because of the climate in which they lived, and that if those people migrated into more quote unquote hospitable climates, then they would become white. So this is an idea of the Renaissance that is not only Eurocentric but also racist, that influenced the way people thought at the time. The idea of colorblindness or post-race, being post-race, are ideas that came about during the 60s and 70s when Jim Crow legalized segregation was ending, or actually Jim Crow didn't end until the late 70s, but these ideas were necessary for people who are trying to integrate for the first time, who are transitioning out of legalized segregation into integrated schools and workplaces. So the idea of colorblindness was helpful for a time, but is now no longer helpful because it masks or erases the actual issues of systemic and institutional racism and encourages them to be dismissed. And the idea that we are a post-race society, some people cite the fact that the US has had a black president, so we must be past ideas of racism or problems related to racism, which after the events of this past summer and many of the other issues of police violence against unarmed young black men and also black women, I think it's clear to most people who pay attention to current events that is not the case. We are not a post-race society.